Well, as always, I like to sit in my little, I call it my she den here in my house with my books and my few little awards. And I find this is where I have really great conversations. I've spoken to this lady before. She's done some work with me, and I've done some work for her with regards to the female lead. And here we are now. She's talking to me again for Angie's Book Club. Edwina Dunn, thank you for your time again.
Angie, it's always a pleasure. You have such original thinking. I love it.
Oh, I'm glad you think so. Now, we really talk about the female lead, and it's fine. I've just had a notification come in, and it's absolutely fine. That just shows that you are a wanted woman. We normally talk about the female lead. Today, we are going to talk about this book, When She's in the Room. And before we talk about the nuts and bolts and who's endorsed the book, I want to know where that statement came from, because that is a very, very powerful statement. When she's in the room.
Yeah, you're so right. And, everything I've done, everything we've ever talked about, Angie, is built on my own experiences. I grew up, my work, my career, my passion actually for data science was formed at a time when every boardroom that I went into was men only. And so, yes, it's beginning to change now. I recognize that. But when I was traveling around world and speaking to some of the biggest retailers and CPGs in the world, sorry, CPGs, consumer products companies,
For those,
they were all men. They were all men. And so, what happens when you, as a female, are in the room, and what do you bring? What's the change? And what does it mean for businesses when you get a leader who is female
yeah.
in the decision making room?
When the decision making room first gets a female, how does she how does she cope? You've got all this male energy around you, and you've walked in the room. And because the room has been predominantly male for however long it has been predominantly male, as a female now, you walk in the room. How do you position yourself? Where do you get the strength and the energy from to stick to your task?
Yes, great question. Um, I think at that stage, you almost forget you're a woman. I had the great good fortune of being the only person at the time who was doing what we were doing. So, if you recall, it was my husband and I who set up dunnhumby. And we didn't travel together because we had a family at the same time. So, I was often in the room alone, really trying to adapt a retailer to a new way of working that involved data and data science. It would now be called AI and algorithms. Let's be clear. That would be the new term. But essentially, I was the only one doing what we were doing, and so it was kind of forgotten the minute I was in there, and I was just the expert on what we did. And I'm very grateful for that. I think being the only expert doing it meant didn't matter, frankly. If I was green, it wouldn't have mattered. I was just helping them win, which is all they cared about.
Right. A job needed to be done. You had the tools and the skills. So let's just get on with it. The fact that
Yes.
you don't look like any of you is irrelevant.
Exactly. And I think if you forget it and you're passionate and knowledgeable about what you do, you can own that space. And a lot of the women I've talked to, they've been the first in that space.
I love that. You've got some very well known women endorsing this book, but they're well known. They've done great things, and they have been firsts. So let's take Martha Lane Fox. lastminute.com. I can remember when that first came about thinking, what a mishmash. But it's proved, and it's come together to prove to be, I would say, a type of Amazon for travel, if that would make sense.
Yes, I think so. And this was at a time, it's hard for young people to really remember this, but there was a time before the internet. And everybody used to go into travel agents. And so, this idea of being able to source travel uh, fast and get a last minute deal was revolutionary. And so we absolutely take searching for holidays and the best deal as the norm, but didn't exist. So it was a very new capability, very exciting, very technology led. And, Martha Lane Fox since has done so much to promote STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths. She's been a huge advocate for it always, because still not as many girls go into these subjects as boys. And yet these are the growth jobs. I talked about AI and tech, but they're no longer industries in their own right. They belong to every industry now. So when you've gone through some of these subjects that underpin technology, you automatically qualify for a higher paid job, a job that's growing and is constantly in demand. And quite often it's an international job. And so many young people want to travel and see exciting places, live abroad. These are the jobs you need to grab onto.
The other end of the scale now, and this is not to downplay Judy Murray, but when we watch Andy Murray and his brother playing tennis, we see this proud mother who always, when her sons win, but what we don't think about is the single mother who just was the driving force behind her sons and gave them the belief that they had the skills, they would find the time, she would find the time to almost engineer them to becoming champions.
Phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal. And we forget that Judy Murray herself was a phenomenal tennis player. So she wasn't just a mother wanting her children to have another life and be more than she achieved. She had already achieved great things. And so she was encouraging and indeed perhaps role modeling some of that world. So all the things you've said are absolutely right. She did it on her own. I think if she'd sat there and, punched the air as a man, it would have been taken very much as, oh, great, what a great sportsman. And, she's willing them on and encouraging them. Whereas actually she got some backbiting of being a pushy mother, which is one of these lovely, I remember when we were at the peak of our success and there was an article written about my work and I was called shrewd. And shrewd is in essence is about being, I suppose, smart, but it also has a slight connotation that's not so nice. It's a bit Shakespearean, taming of the shrew. And there's always these words that float around. And, I think they can hurt and damage women's careers because women have to believe that their motivations and what's inside them, this passion that they have, is a force for good, not something to be ashamed of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's move on to age, because for some reason we're programmed into believing that when we get to a certain age, we shouldn't tell people what our age is. I don't know if that's because we should stop working at a certain age, or my daughter says to me that sell-by dates are put on girls from very, very young. So if you don't have babies by a certain time, you would have passed your sell by date. And I wonder if that programs us into believing that at a certain age, we should stop being seen in the room. We should
Yes.
stop being heard. And what I love about this book is you've made it very, very clear that regardless of your age, I mean, there's a great chapter for women 65 and over. What, you know, why should you stop? Keep walking in that room. Did you get backlash for that? I'm very interested to know that. Great chapters on being 18 to 24 and 25 upwards, but that's 65 and over. I mean, I loved it.
Well, do you know, that you are the first to observe this, and it's really important observation. No, I haven't had a backlash, but the reality is that so much of what is advertising and marketing is trained on the young, is trained on that young person still searching for who they are and what their super strengths are. And I feel that so much is missed. My big thesis right now is that companies are absolutely missing the powerhouse years of 51% of the population, i.e. women. So women, are younger, are searching for relationships. They're searching for connectivity. They're trying to understand, what am I good at? How can I maximize what I'm good at? And then they come into these sort of middle years where they are juggling life, family, caring for elderly parents, and the burden of unpaid work is immense, and that is taking so many of them out of the workplace. That's what we're seeing right now, that the quiet quitting, or even the noisy quitting, whatever they want to call it. And it's like, no, women aren't quitting, they are burdened and in loving relationships with children and elderly dependents. And then you get these older years where sometimes they get brought back in as grandparents to help their children care for their children. But these women in these older years are absolutely at the top of their game. And why we want to lose them? The truth is, they are somewhat invisible. They are somewhat marginalized. And my ambition is to say to so many male leaders, because most of the leaders are still men, look up, look out there. These women are making most of the buying decisions right across the world. So women are responsible for 70% plus of everything that's bought in the world. So these aren't feeble elderly women. These are powerhouse decision makers controlling GDP.
I loved, and I'm just going to hold this page up, and I'm hoping you do the 18 to 24, you talk about these women in these different stages of their lives and how they are viewed. And I loved the 65 and over, because I'm thinking, okay, when I was growing up, when my mother hit 60, it was an automatic shrinking.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Okay,
Yeah.
she's going to shrink now. She's going to retire. She's going to look after her grandchildren. And you used a word that I hate, but it's real. She's going to become invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a really dangerous, and I say that word unapologetically, it's a dangerous piece of vocabulary for any woman who may have been on this earth 55, 65 years physically, but their mind is still as vibrant as a 30 or a 40-year-old. And they've still got the energy and the vision and the passion to still work.
100%. And it's a trained skill. It's an experienced skill. But this invisibility, unfortunately, is real. And so I've decided to focus on women as the being the invisible pound. Do you know, Angie, we don't have a term for women's contribution to the economy, to growth. We have the pink pound, which is the
Yeah.
gay community. We have the black pound, which is the black community. We have the purple, or we have the grey pound, which is the elderly. I think it's largely men, isn't it? The grey pound, and then there's the purple pound, which is the less able-bodied community. We don't have anything for women, so I'm calling it the invisible pound, because when companies wake up to the fact that women don't fade away, they don't become invisible, they are just removed from history and commerce and business planning, but they still remain that amazing force of, how to do better for the family and the community. And everybody knows, if you go to, the developing world, if you give money to a woman,
Oh,
how much better the return than if you give it to a man. So I'm just saying, why don't we think about that in the developed world and think that this powerhouse of women is not and should not be made invisible or sidelined?
let's talk about this invisible pound. I wasn't going to go there, but as you brought it up, let's talk about this invisible pound. Does it have more strength being invisible? Hear me out. Because when you do eventually say, do you know what? This group of women can bring something to the table. Is it then a recognized strength? Because it's going to hold, it's the foundation of so much, from the family to business to the community.
Well, I don't know if it's better or worse that it's invisible, but certainly it's been underestimated. And that underestimation means there's an opportunity for those that see it, to not recognize that, companies can ask men what they want and need. And that's a very comfortable discussion. Or they can be uncomfortable and ask a decision maker who's actually the woman. But as soon as you go in that direction, you think, well, why are women leaders not able to ask women who are deciding what gets spent on healthcare or holidays, or frankly, even which car is driven in the household? If you go there, you start to think, well, maybe we should have more women in these powerful roles, these decision-making roles in businesses, and then maybe we'll get some real change to happen.
And it will happen. And I believe you're laying some amazing foundations to ensure that it happens. And what I love about Olivia Colman's, and I know we're using names of famous women, but it's what she says. When she's in the room, it's all about busting myths. And that made me think, she's got to go into the room to undo a lot of, she's got to go in the room to destroy, to alter some foundations and rebuild. That's what she's got to do.
And I love what she says, because, part of the challenge I find is that as soon as you use the word woman or female, or talk about the 51% of women in the world, or 50% if you take the whole world, you switch off the male community, because we don't get men talking about the importance and the relevance and the contribution of women. And we have women's groups and we have female empowerment, and men are not in the room when we're talking about it. And so we've got this really perverse action that's happening, which is women are talking about, we want to be seen, we're ambitious, we want to talk about all these myths about us being risk takers. and there are no men in the room when we're talking about it. So my hope is that actually men will read this book and actually will realize there's a fantastic growth opportunity that it points a finger at, and it's there for the taking.
What I love about you from day one of knowing you, Edwina, it's not about speed, but it's about bringing balance. And that is so, so important. And I've said it before, left, right, up, down, you know, light, dark, male, female. It's about bringing that balance. And it's about recognizing the contribution that we can make. And there you go, notification again, to make what you're doing more positive.
Yes.
You know, developing. And in the same way that we were saying, you know, we want boys to read the female read, we want men to read when she's in the room. Edwina, always a pleasure. I think I need to do ABC Live. We need to have a live event. And I think you need to be on a panel and we have people asking you questions, because I think you would probably find yourself talking all evening.
I love talking to you. You see the world in a way that is always seeking balance and that sort of thread of kindness that always comes through when I talk with you. But I'm always available for any conversations on this, my favorite subject. Thank you so much, Angie.
To organise an ABC Live. Edwina Dunn, thank you so much. When she's in the room, it's available now from all good bookshops and Amazon.
And Amazon.
Fantastic. As always, thank you for your time.
Thank you.